Make it, but right now, until he gets here, we'll move forward and go from there then. The first item we have is number one, consideration to accepting the bids for the Westlake Drive Phase 1 and awarding the contract. John, would you like to give us a little update on that?
Certainly. Vice Mayor and Council, we took bids on the Westlake Drive Phase 1 project yesterday. Primarily good news. We took 4 bids, which was a surprise. I didn't know that we would get 4 bids, but 4 bids. They're tabulated in your packet. The low bid was from CNL Excavating of St. Joseph, Minnesota. We worked with CNL on a number of projects in the city over the course of the past several years, but most recently they did the South Washington Avenue project. So good firm to work with. They also have some local contractors involved in the project, which would be very helpful. So CNL's bid was less than 1% over what we were estimating, coming in at just over $5 million. So, I mean, that's the good news. Broken record, same story as other bids. It came in at estimate where we believe current pricing is, but it's still up pretty significantly from last year, for example. So, but the county board met this morning at their regular board meeting. They've also awarded this, so contingent on council action. So your action would be to consider award of this contingent on MnDOT and federal approvals. We still have some steps we have to go through related to the federal funding on the project, but award contingent on those, and we'll get off to the races. So, any questions?
Any questions for John on this project and awarding the bid?
Mr. Vice Mayor, I think you also have a cost participation summary just as a, I guess, a matter of point, so.
It looks like the best bid was the $5,071,000 and went up as high as $6,229,000. So the bids had a range on them, but like you said, the CNL Excavating ended up getting that.
And the
lowest bid.
Correct, and the cost participation between the county and the city on this one shakes out to be about a 70%, 30% split between the city and the county, with the county picking up about 70% of the project cost.
All right, very good. So hearing that, is there a motion to go ahead and to award the bid to CNL Excavating in the amount of $5,071,254.50?
So moved.
Got a motion?
Second.
We do have a second. Is there any questions or discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Let's go down to item 2, consideration to a resolution approving an advanced construction agreement with MnDOT relative to the federal funding for Westlake Drive Phase 1 project. And that's the resolution talking to getting federal funds and so forth.
This is one, council, this is one component of that federal approval. This is effectively an agreement. Our federal grant funds for the trail, the transportation alternative funds that we got to help pay for a portion of the trail, are actually fiscal year 24, federal year 24 funds. So we would be building this and basically paying for it, getting reimbursed from the federal government come federal year, fiscal year 24, which would be October of 23. It could be sooner if they have funds available.
Okay, any questions for John on that? If not, is there a motion for consideration to the resolution approving the advanced construction agreement with MnDOT relative to the federal funding for Westlake Drive? And this is for the federal grant funds to come in. Is there a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion or other questions for John? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. And at this time, we have Senator Ken Eakin just arrived, and then also we have Representative Paul Morcourt here, and they're going to give us a little update of what's happening on at the legislative session and how it's ended up and whether or not they think that there's a chance that they might get together. But which one of you like to go first? And welcome to both of you. We're so happy you can be here today.
Hello, thanks so much. Really appreciate you inviting us to be here, and yeah, you just want us to talk from here, I assume. Yeah, so.
You can sit at the podium. Go to the podium if you like there. It's got the mic then. Yeah.
Yeah, so you can hear me better. Great. Yeah, well, thank you, Ron, and thank you, everybody. was kind of a disappointing end to the session because we didn't get the surplus money budget, the supplemental budget passed. I mean, there were some things passed, but the bulk of it is still on the table. I'm hoping for a special session so that we can actually get that money back to the people of Minnesota. There's different ways to do it. We can do it through, tax cuts. We could do it through a rebate that the governor's been talking about. We could do it through, more investments and things that are badly needed, including funding for our nursing homes, the shortage in staffing that we have there. And right now is a time when people really need it. So that $9.25 billion surplus is really needed. That's a lot of money. It's the biggest surplus we've ever had. It's historic. And people are really hurting with the inflation going on as well. So I'm hopeful that we can still get together, get an agreement done. There seem to be some people who would like to push it off into the next year because they think that maybe they'll have complete control of all three branches of government after the next election, which means they don't have to compromise with the other side. I think that's very unfortunate because I think compromise is a good thing. We are the only state legislature in the nation that is divided, where one party controls the House, the other party controls the Senate. I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing. If you can get compromise, I think that that leads to solutions that are actually more stable and long-lasting solutions, and that's because both sides have buy-in. Both sides have something they like in the ultimate compromise that's reached. So nobody's trying to undo it the next time around because both sides have good things in there. So as long as we can reach a compromise, I think that we can set an example for the rest of the country as to how a divided government can and should work. And it's really unfortunate to see the polarization that's been taking place in our country, and it's seeped into our state as well. We're not immune from that. That makes it more and more difficult to reach those compromises. We are, at this time in history, the polarization in this country is about as extreme as it's been. Probably going back to the Civil War days, people not talking to each other because they disagree politically, families breaking up because of politics. Again, I think that's very unfortunate because democracy doesn't function under those conditions. Democracy demands, requires compromise and working together and reaching some kind of agreements. Our whole country is based on compromise. I mean, the Constitution wouldn't exist if it wasn't for compromise. So compromise is not a four-letter word. It's an absolutely essential ingredient to a well-functioning democracy. And so again, I hope that we can get together. We have in the past. I think in Minnesota we've had a strong tradition of working together and finding that common ground. I think that we can do that again. I'm hopeful that at least in certain areas like the bonding bill, this is the bonding year after all, and we're hoping to get the Washington ballpark done here, and the historic ballpark. I know that Senator Bach, who chairs the bonding committee, was very impressed when you guys came down to testify or to talk to Senator Bach about the ballpark. He was impressed by it. Thought that would be a good project to fund. So I think if we can get a bonding bill done, I think that we're in a good position to get that done. And then also funding for the Heartland Trail, funding for our college campuses, our public infrastructure, which is so badly needed right now. We have a huge backlog of projects that we need to get through. And so we can't afford to let a bonding bill fall by the wayside this session. We need to get one done. We need it to be a robust bill. So hopefully we can get together on that. We did accomplish some good things this session. I don't want to make it sound like nothing was accomplished. We certainly, we got drought relief for farmers done. We did get also more funding for broadband, the historic sized bill for border-to-border broadband services to hook up all communities to make sure that we have access to high-quality internet services, which we now understand it's not just a luxury or a nicety. This is a necessity now for our communities. So we made some real strides in that area. And the pandemic made it even more apparent how important broadband services are to our communities. It's kind of like the Rural Electric Association was in earlier days for electricity, hooking up all our communities. We want to make sure we leave no community behind. So I think that that was vitally important. And we also passed the frontline worker pay for them. I got an agreement on that, about $500 million that went into additional compensation for those who faced the dangers of the pandemic and deserve to have what some have called hero pay for the work that they had done. So again, there's some accomplishments, but there's still a lot that was left on the table. And a lot of work had been done before then. I mean, there was a general agreement on how to divide up that money, the $9.25 billion, how to divide it up between tax cuts, funding for education, E12, funding for higher education, funding for health and human services, funding for the environment. We had divided all that up there. So there's a general agreement and framework in place. It's a matter of getting those final details worked out. And I think what's key to success in getting it done is maybe convincing some of those who would like to push it off into next year that that is not an acceptable option, that we need to do it this year, we need to do it now. People can't afford to wait. Our economy is struggling, people are hurting, inflation's running at all-time highs, so we need to make sure we do it now. And I'm going to continue pushing for that. And I know with my colleague, Representative Marquardt, who did such an outstanding job on the tax bill, that was one of the things that's actually been done. But again, it gets tied in with all these other areas of the budget. And so it's got to kind of all be done as one block. But Representative Marquardt certainly did his job. So, but thank you. And with that, I'll pass it off to my colleague.
Thank you, Ken. Representative Marquardt.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Zeman, and members, thanks for the invite. And usually, I always let the senator go first because there's not a lot that has to be said after the senators usually go. But, you know, this year wasn't a budget year. It was actually the bonding year. But then we wound up with the $9.35 billion surplus, and then it became a budget year. And so what happened in a shorter session, you're trying to put a big budget year in with a bonding year, and that made things a little more difficult. And you don't have to pass a budget this year because last year we passed everything, so the government doesn't shut down or anything, so there wasn't quite the urgency. But the fact of the matter that we, just like the senator mentioned, I'm hoping and we're pushing for a special session. If we don't get one, it's a huge, huge lost opportunity, just big time on so many different fronts. And so kind of where you get, you know, we had $9.35 billion in surplus, and then in this biennium, and then in the next biennium, we had about $6 billion of ongoing structural balance. It's not one time. That actually means into the next 2 years, the revenues were over expenditures by $6 billion. So you add those two numbers up, it was about 15.3, and as Senator Eakin said, with the unemployment insurance trust fund replenishment of $2.7 billion, which basically saved businesses, because normally that was a fee paid by businesses, that saved them an increase of $2.7 billion that they would have seen otherwise in increases in fees or taxes, whatever you want to call them. And then the $500 million in the frontline workers, another $200 million. So you have that 15.3 minus about 3.3 with those two, and we wound up with about $12 billion into the next 3 years, the remaining year of this biennium and the next 2 years. And so Governor Walz and Senate Majority Leader Miller and Speaker Hortman came up to an agreement on a 4-4-4 with the remaining $12 billion. $4 billion in a tax, $4 billion in a tax bill, $4 billion in spending, and of that $4 billion, $1 billion was going to go into education, $1 billion health and human services, I think 450 into public safety, and the rest they would work out. And then $4 billion left on the bottom line for, you know, if you go into an economic downturn. So I thought it was really responsible. That was agreed to. So as you know, we didn't get all that done. Now, I just want to talk briefly about this tax bill because this is a huge lost opportunity. We did come to an agreement. Senator Nelson and I actually signed the spreadsheet to show that we'd come to that. We actually thought, and we held a press conference on that if people saw what the tax cut was, that it would, hurry them along to get the rest of it done. But that didn't occur. But the income tax cuts in there was about $1.1 billion a year. That is, Minnesota's known as a high tax, high service state, but that tax bill would have cut our income taxes by 7%. I mean, that's significant, 7%. And would have completely exempted all taxes on Social Security benefits. And just looking around the room here, I can see some of us would benefit from that. Now, if I was running for re-election again, I'd never say anything like that about people's ages. But, during election year, people were always 10 years younger when I went around. But at any rate, that was significant because we've talked a lot about it would have been a small rate cut, done some things with the renter's credit. But the most negative part, not getting this tax bill done, probably as I look at more specifically to Detroit Lakes, is local government aid. And the way the formula has been working is that when Representative Marquardt took office in 2002, you had this much LGA, and now I'm leaving, you have that much. That's a real effective legislator when you're going that way. But a lot of it has to do, of course, with the formula. And the League of Minnesota Cities, the Coalition, and other groups came together and came up with a local government aid formula. And about every 9 to 10 years we do this. That would have helped Detroit Lakes, would have addressed some of those unfairnesses or inequities that are in that formula. That was a big push by the House. We were not able to get that in. What was in the final tax bill was $30 million increase on local government aid with a hold harmless. So you would have got the same as you would have gotten last year. But now, without that, and I didn't look at the calculations. I'm sure City Administrator Clem could tell us exactly what that's going to be. But you're going to lose local government aid without that. And other cities will too. That's why it's so important we try to get this done. So counties are going to get another $30 million. And the Ag to School credit for school districts, that was going to get raised from 70% to 85%. So, and on the education side, they were down to like $30 million, but $900 million was going to go into what's called the special education cross subsidy, which is huge. This is huge. You talk to any superintendent, and that is just big. And so like the senator says, I'm hoping, folks, there can be enough pressure put, because we're looking at group homes and that are really saying nursing homes. I mean, we could have really fixed the roof, so to speak, for a rainy day with some of these dollars that we have, some of it one time, some of it ongoing. So if we don't come back this year, it's a huge missed opportunity besides not doing any of the bonding bill stuff like the Washington Ball Complex. I want to finish with this. So I've had the great honor to serve this city for 20 years and be able to work with a lot of excellent council members, starting with Mayor Buboltz. Dixie Johnson was on the council, I think, when I started, and Bruce Imholt's not here now, but all of you, and just all the great organizations in town. And it's been really enjoyable and a lot of honor to be able to see how the city has grown, and Kent and I being able to be a part of it. Just talking to Vernell with the wastewater treatment project. You were a state leader, and I remember when you had Mark Dayton sitting right about there, and you made that presentation that day about how you could be a leader and a model for the state, and Governor Dayton was impressed. And you've been a leader, and just the other things, the pavilion area and the new police department and the Becker County Museum. There's always something going on in Detroit Lakes. The one thing I didn't like was that you had all this new housing growth, and every time I'd be door knocking, I'd go into a new cove and there'd be another 10, 12 houses. No, don't get me wrong. The most enjoyable thing I ever did was door knock, but oh geez, I didn't see those before. And so, no, it was a great thing. So I just want to say thank you. You've made it easy and enjoyable to represent this city because you do your homework, you do the legwork, You get everything done and then you bring it to the state, and you've done pretty much all the work, and Kent and I just had to kind of push it through from there. So thank you so much. And also thanks to all the citizens of Detroit Lakes. It's been an honor to represent the citizens, and like I said, the most enjoyable thing I did as a legislator was go out and do the door knocking. So just a huge, huge thank you. In these 20 years, there's so many things that I'll never forget. And, you've given me a lot more than I've given back. So it's been an honor, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. I wanted to say a few words about the fact whenever Kelsey and I and other members would go down for a legislative action week in February, we always came down and we had two familiar faces. And that's Senator Eakin, Representative Marquardt. And they do play a big role. When you've got one representative there, Marquardt for 22 years and Senator Eakin for 20 years, that makes a big difference. Seniority counts. But we not only had two good members, but they were members that are well respected in St. Paul. And when we came, every city's going to St. Paul that legislative action week for one thing, and that's to shake hands with their representatives, and they all have a list of things they need to have for their city. Well, every time we've gone down with our list, both of these folks listened to us, and they were very helpful in making for the needs of Detroit Lakes. And that's one of the big things, that when you have somebody down there that people know and are representing you, and that's the first thing I thought of when we heard one of you was going, and then we heard second one going, I thought legislative seniority, because that makes a big difference. And now we're gonna have to kind of like start over from scratch and build up, good response with the people and so forth. But both of you have played a big role in the city of Detroit Lakes for our growth. You've been very vital, and you've represented both the parties, whether you're Republican or Democrat. You've done well for our city. You've helped with so many projects, and you mentioned about the water plant, the sewage, all that. That was a $17 million help. How have we done that? We didn't get that help. That was a big help. But then you came along and you helped us years back with our Highway 10 project, and we had to have that done. And then you helped us with our police station with the bond needs, and then with the Becker County Museum, and now we're working on Washington Ballpark. And there's so many things that I haven't mentioned that you have all been a vital part of, and the big deal is LGA dollars. We're losing LGA dollars, which that's dollars we're not gonna get, so we're gonna have to decide how we're gonna make that dollars up, and usually it's called put back it on the property tax, and it makes it kind of tough, but you guys are always there to help us, and you've all made a big difference, and you were always there to help us. You were always gracious to us. When we went to your offices, you never threw us out. You always helped us for whatever we asked for, and you seemed to understand what our needs were, and that's the biggest thing, is we're kind of in competition. We've got that outside Minnesota versus the inside metro area, and there's only so many dollars going around, and everybody's asking for it. But both of you have done a great job in representing Detroit Lakes, and you're going to be really missed. And I just can't say a big enough thank you for both of you for everything that you've done, not only for the state, but especially for Detroit Lakes. You've been very, very much helpful.
Yeah, if I could just, I want to thank you, first of all, Councilmember Zeman, for the kind words. It really means a lot to us. And I too want to express my appreciation for the honor of being able to represent you all these years. It really has been a tremendous honor and a great privilege and an enjoyable experience. One of the best parts of the job, as Representative Marquardt's already referred to, is the fact that you get to meet so many good people and work with so many good people. And I've always felt that we've had the greatest communities, to represent in Minnesota, because you're so proactive, and it makes it so easy for us as a result. So, and the community engagement is so visible here in Detroit Lakes with all the things going on and the growth that's taking place. And the growth includes me and my family now too. We're just south of Audubon now, so I feel like we are now part of this community, and one of the reasons is because of how vibrant this community is, and it's because of the work that you've done, and you've been great partners, and I've really appreciated that, so thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. I have a couple plaques here that we want to give to each of you, and I'd kind of like to have the entire council come down and have our pictures taken with both you gentlemen. And, you know, it isn't often that we get to say goodbye to somebody who's served our area for 20 years and 22 years. And we've got a plaque there for you, and we hope that you can wait through the end, because we have something else we'd like to do for you guys too. But let you come on up here, and Kelsey, come on up here, let's get our pictures here. And, I know, that's okay. Kelsey, you wanna come on? Kelsey, you come on this side, and then Paul, you come over here.
Get the right one?
So is everybody in there, everybody around us here?
Okay, we can do better than this. We can do better than this. Okay, let's lift it up. Yeah, excellent, just like that. Good, okay, I got shoulders. Okay, can everybody see the cameras? Okay, first we'll go to JT. Good. Okay, JT's good. Then one for Carrie, nice and special. Harry, and then one for me. One for the newspaper. Actually, many for the newspaper, because I shoot on continuous high. And then I zoom in, and then I zoom back, and then we go like that. Something funny, ha ha ha. Okay.
Thank you. Bubba, John.
No, you're gonna wait around till the end, aren't you? Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. So, right now it looks like we're going to go ahead and, go over a little bit on the, City Hall, remodel update, and Kelsey, do you wanna lead off of that?
Vice Mayor and Council, as you know, we've been working on the design for the City Hall remodel and kind of got to the point where continue refining the site plan, the layout, and then some of the exterior renderings. So with that, I'm going to have Matt Malone from BHH kind of present on that. I think we got it up on the screen. And I'll let him kind of walk through that. And then in your packet was also an updated budget and also a letter from Matt about kind of the energy targets that we have for the project. And again, I'll let Matt speak to those.
Thank you, members of the council. Up on the screen, if you guys can see that, is the proposed site plan. I've got a handy little laser pointer too, so because my arms aren't quite far enough to reach the screens. But so as you guys recall from previous discussions, we're looking at changing the orientation of the main entrance to the city hall. Obviously trying to orientate it more towards downtown, give it a face, also make it more accessible for public, and then also create accessibility to the entire building and utilize the entire building. As you know, the liquor store space has been vacant for quite a few years, almost 10 years. And so we'd be utilizing that space, so occupying we're calling it the main level, which would be the lower level, and then this upper floor too. So as you can see on the site plan, I don't know if my laser pointer is even gonna work today. It's not gonna work? All right, I'll point with my long arms then. So you can see that there's kind of two shaded areas of the existing building. The lighter shaded building is the existing building. The darker shading is the proposed addition. So we'd be coming in on the north side of the building, expanded parking lot in that area to capture a few more parking spaces. And then the staff parking would actually be what's now the public parking up on this upper level. So overall, it looks like we've got a net gain of, is it 4 parking spaces, John? 4 or 6 parking spaces with the additional square footage. So it's kind of a win-win when we look at the accessibility of the building, but also the expanded parking. It's going to make it a little bit more easy for public to enter the building. Overall site plan, we're also looking at incorporating in public EV charging stations as well as staff EV charging stations. So there'll be kind of 2 sides of the building will have EV charging stations. connecting the lower parking lot with the upper parking lot. We're still working out a few of the details of how that all goes together and how the final plan goes together, but aesthetically being able to easily connect those versus having to go out onto the sidewalk and walk from one to the other. And anybody that's done that in the wintertime realizes how much of a challenge that is. We're also looking at adding the employee staff, or the staff patio space on the, let's call it the McDonald's side of the building, getting some screening in there, but also inviting staff to spend a little more time outside when it's nice days like today. So overall, you can see the site plan. And go to the next slide. This is we're calling it the main level plan, which is actually the old liquor store plan. Top of the sheet, you can see the main entrance. Vestibule comes into a lobby space. Again, we've gone through a number of iterations to try and get as much natural light into the core of the building as we can, for, obviously for work environment, but also just making it more inviting for public to be able to come into that space. Right now, it's a little bit secluded when you come into the main entrance of the City Hall. And so overall, the plan hasn't changed a whole lot as far as layout, fit and function. Some of the spaces have tweaked in size and orientation a little bit, but for the most part, it's still very similar to what you'd seen before. With the elevator off of the lobby, kind of a main, let's call it monumental stair off of the lobby to get to the upper level. But as you walk in the doors, again, making it as convenient for public as possible. The service counters are right there as you walk in the front door, so front and center.
Matt, if I can, just one thing I was gonna add is, one thing that's changed a little bit, and the reason why we started the site plan is actually that front addition got shrunk a little bit in order to fit the parking lot, because we weren't able to have enough for the driving lanes with the original plan we looked at last time with council. So this is actually pared down a little bit. The elevator went to
Equipment roomless.
an equipment roomless option, so that was able to be removed. So this is actually a little bit of a tighter, smaller footprint than what we've seen before.
Office sizes, functionality, staff, ancillary spaces, a lot of those stayed the same. But like Kelsey said, the footprint of the addition actually reduced down to primarily on the stair area. So the next slide. This is we're calling it the upper level. It's the level that we're on right now that everybody's used to. The space that we're in currently is on the bottom of the sheet there. Those will maybe zoom out just a little bit more, and you can see that council space. There we go. The room we're in, or the space we're in, is on the very bottom of the sheet. That'll become a public meeting room, space for utility meetings. Has bathrooms off of that area, but primarily the council chambers is moving inside the original building proper, and it's about double the size of what it is today. So it's going to be able to host a lot better functionality, a lot more seats, improved AV in that space too, so that you guys as a council, you're not turning around and looking at a screen that's behind you. We'll be able to incorporate larger screens so you guys can address the public as you're sitting in your meetings, and then also help for hearing impaired, getting better sound system throughout the whole space too, in addition to being larger capacity. But again, as you come up the stair on the very top of the page, that's open to a lobby. Again, natural light. We're trying to bring as much natural light into the core of the building as we can. So we've got some curtain walls on that side, on the north side to do that. And again, stepping our ceilings down to bring, again, natural light as far into the core as the building for an inviting environment as possible. Layout virtually the same as what you've seen before. We've got a couple of nuances as far as access and where you as the council would come in, likely parking in the staff parking lot, and so there's not the crossover. But as far as actual staff layouts, it's very similar to what you guys have seen in the past. The next page, oops, one more up. There we go. This is what everybody's used to. This is what everybody sees from Detroit Lakes. There's a lot of people that don't realize there's a city hall in this building. And so in desperate need of a facelift, but functionality-wise, it made a lot of sense to come off of this, which is an image of the north side, because this is primarily where the larger parking lot is. And so with a lot of iterations, it made sense to come this way, to give not only the city hall a little bit of a presence, but also make it a little more convenient or a lot more convenient for the general public. So with that, kind of the layout reflects what our proposed renderings are. Today we've got a number of different options for colors. So we'll kind of go through those color options. The biggest thing is probably the massing stays the same from each one of the options. We just wanted to throw out a couple of color options to get feelers on what direction we want to go. So with the next slide, this is what we're looking at as far as fit, finish, and function to the addition on the north side. So you can see kind of that main element on the north side, somewhat representative of the police department design. We wanted to tie in a few of the city buildings and city elements together so that there's some continuity between different buildings citywide. And you can see the larger glass curtain walls again to get that natural light going into the core of the building and make the space feel more like an inviting place that people are going to want to go to. And again, giving the city hall some identity or some presence facing towards downtown. So a lot of the similar materials to what was used on the police department, not all the same. Trying to do as much with a limitation on budget as possible, and so we're being very cost conscious when it comes to our finishes on the exterior. So this is kind of option A.
Matt's trying to put it nicely, we're trying to use a little bit of a cheaper stone than what we put on PD, so.
So this is option A. If we scroll through, we've got options B, which is a little bit darker tones, a little bit more in with today's colorations, I guess you could say, for exteriors. Might be a little more trendy than the first option. Option C is kind of a marriage of both A and B. It's a little bit more timeless, but still pulls in some of those the trendier appearances. And then we got a little crazy and said, okay, let's see what it looks like to throw some color on the building. And see where that goes. And then the last option is the throwback to, hey, let's honor that blue panel we have on the outside that everybody loves. And being cost conscious, we even contemplated reusing the blue panel. No, we didn't. We did not. We did not. So the next options are just kind of additional views of each one of the options. This again is on Frazee Street, looking towards the south to the main entrance. You can see the curtain walls and the glass that we're trying to get into the interior of the building. So we can scroll through these. Again, option C is kind of that marriage. D is just a funky color option on there, and then and color is always subjective. We'll certainly welcome input from the council on what direction they'd want to go, but not expecting any kind of decision on options today on where we would want to go. Unless we want to throw out some options, we can certainly do that. So, and this is just a collage of all of them, all of the options. It's kind of hard to see back, but you can kind of put them top to bottom, left to right, compare all the views together. So any questions on plan, fit, function, design, feedback on any of it?
Approximately how many more square feet are we picking up with this remodeling from what we currently have? How much more will we have when we're done?
So the actual additional square footage, it's about 3,300 additional square feet on 2 floors from what you had previously. So the original footprint is about just about 18,000 square feet, and so we'll be adding about another 3,400 square feet to that.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions on the building project here? Any other questions? Kelsey, where are we at this point now? What's our next step here now?
Yeah, Matt, did you want to
Well,
touch on those other two attachments, or?
Well, those are harder ones to talk about, so if you want to talk about them, certainly, no, I'll handle it, yeah.
I think we'll just go through that. If there's no other questions on the renderings, we'll go to the budget, and then we'll talk about that sustainability, and then I think Matt can touch on
And I want,
timeline.
before I do that, I want to mention, it was about 50 years ago that the city bought this bottling plant that was on this location. And from a bottling plant, it became our current city hall. So we've been here 50 years, and it shows us wear and tear. So it's not like we've done this just 10 years ago. It's 50-year-old building, and it's showing us wear and tear. So I want to bring that up.
Yeah, when we had our engineers walk through, they were impressed that a lot of the infrastructure is still functioning, by way of mechanical, electrical, plumbing, so it's paid its dues, that's for sure. So overall, what we're looking at for cost is a little bit different than what we presented last fall when we were talking through, because obviously everybody's aware of inflation. The construction industry isn't immune to that whatsoever. So we're kind of following in tune with that. We've seen a lot of the bigger increases on mechanical, electrical, and plumbing aspects since last fall. Some of the commodities are relatively stable, but they're still, as John had said earlier, they're relatively stable, but they're significantly increased over what they were in years past. And so overall cost estimate, we've got some really recent information to compare to, and so we updated the overall cost based on that information and kind of where markets are at right now. And so what we're looking at for a estimated hard construction cost, and when I say hard construction cost, it's basically if you took this building, held it upside down in your hand, and anything that didn't fall out, that's hard construction. So roofs, walls, floors, carpeting, built-in type components. So we're looking at about 4.9 million for the hard construction costs. On top of that, all of the things that when you hold it upside down, they fall out, those are the soft costs, the engineering fees, the building permitting fees. We're looking at about 800,000 for that. So a total project cost of around 5.7 total project cost. So it's an increase over where we were last year. I can't remember exactly what the number was last year, but it's close to $1 million more, I think, as far as overall project cost. We have done some negotiation in the plans as far as cutting back some square foot on ancillary space, as well as kind of reducing down the scope on the exterior to kind of minimize that and be as cost effective as we can, but still not sacrifice the overall design intent and sacrifice the building environment, so to speak. So that's where we're looking at for overall project costs. I just wanted to touch on some of the sustainability aspects that we're looking at. Again, we're dealing with an existing building, so we're kind of tied into the blocks of this building. We could certainly explore additional sustainability items, but you get into a lot of challenges with that of how much do you augment an existing building for the sustainability aspect of it that would never have a payback. And so we've been analyzing a lot of those scenarios. We're still going through some of that just to look at paybacks on the infrastructure or the systems we're gonna put in today. But some of the things I just wanna highlight, automated lighting controls, occupancy sensors, daylight sensors. Because we are bringing natural light into the building, we wanna make sure we're capitalizing on that. So if no one's in the room, the light should shut off. If someone's in the room, they turn on. And so we're capitalizing on that. If there's natural light coming in and helping those light levels to be comfortable, we can dim those lights and make it comfortable, but save the energy on it. A lot of that is tied to the HVAC. We do the same thing. If there's no one in a space, the heating and ventilation doesn't necessarily have to be running at full bore unless there's someone in that space. And so that'll be tied to the automatic lighting controls and sensor controls. Obviously, LED light fixtures inside and out. That's kind of commonplace, but it's something worth noteworthy that we'd be looking at LED fixtures, low energy consumption. Air source heating and cooling. So working with the city and providing some of the same systems for this building that would be offered to public if they were interested in that. So utilizing those, ultra insulating the building. So obviously Minnesota is an extreme climate. I think I saw a meme that said it was minus 70 in the wintertime and it was 110 or 114 the other day. So we've got a pretty extreme climate that we deal with in Minnesota. So our energy code kind of reflects that just as a baseline. And so naturally Minnesota buildings are always more energy efficient than nationally built buildings, right? We're at a higher standard just because we have to be. But just because of that, we still want to go a little bit above and beyond that energy code because there is a benefit over and above the baseline energy code. So we'd be looking at ultra insulating the building envelope on the new construction and then augmenting the existing by putting more insulation in the existing in the renovation area. The glass and the glazing, we talked about the natural light, but we're going to make sure that our U values exceed that of the energy code. So a lot of people say, "Oh, you got all this glass. It's going to be a heating and cooling nightmare." Well, it's actually the opposite. The benefit you get from the solar aspects of it way offset any energy that would go out on the consumption side. But the glass we use now with the coatings, the argon-filled glass, the energy efficiency as far exceeds what it was even 5 years ago. So we'd be looking at using high-energy glass and glazing in thermally broken storefront systems. We're looking at replacing all of the existing windows with new, again, energy-efficient, upgraded windows. Some of these are vintage to the original building. Upgrading I talked on it before, but upgrading the existing wall assemblies to exceed the energy code. So again, that ultra insulated building envelope is going to help for energy consumption. We're strategically designing and sizing windows to bring natural light into the core, and then also be able to capitalize on that. We're looking at using a solar reflective membrane for the roofing. So instead of the black roof, and we'd be using something that reflects the heat, so a TPO or a lighter colored roofing. And then the EV charging stations, another side of the sustainability that we're looking at. So those are kind of some of the components. We consider geothermal, wind, solar. There's a lot of those things that are really good in the right setting. And can certainly have a payback when you're dealing with existing buildings and trying to retrofit. The payback just isn't there, and so some of those items we said, okay, it would be good to do. However, budget isn't going to permit the rest of it, and just the cost. It's cost prohibitive, and there isn't the payback. So we tried to hit as many of the sustainable things as we could, and include those in. And again, we're talking more about the energy payback. We might be able to do a little bit more if at all possible, but that's kind of where we're looking at from a sustainability standpoint too. So.
Okay, any questions at all then? And I might want to say too that, the city and the public utilities, this is a joint effort for building this building, and they've been putting, both these areas have been putting money away for this project. And Kelsey, approximately how much have we got put away for this project?
I'll let Heidi answer that one.
Heidi?
So, I don't know if I want to give a specific dollar amount that we've sort of set aside, but
Just approximately on it.
yeah, I mean, I think we can probably fund the project at this level. If we go much above it, I think we'd be pushing it. So I think, we're getting toward the top of our budget comfort level,
Okay,
I would say.
So what I'm saying, we won't have to go out and bond for much of this.
No, I would say no.
Okay, that's
Between
the good news.
Yeah, so the majority will come half and half from the city's liquor fund and the electric utility fund, with a small portion of some of the parking lot improvements potentially coming from the food and beverage tax fund, since that is public parking, and those funds can be used for that type of improvement. So that's sort of our plan as of right now.
Okay, very good. Any other questions that council might have? So, once again, Kelsey, where do we go from here now? Because everybody knows that we've got this thing called inflation, and, every 6 months it seems to take a big jump, but what are we looking at?
Yeah, so we still have quite a few design meetings we have to do. We haven't really got into the interior yet, and I know Alderman Zeman and Josephson were on that when we did the PD, and there's a lot to be involved with that. So the goal would still be to try to be bidding this thing by the end of summer. I think the original plan is be out bidding in August, so we can try and award a bid in September, be moving out in September for a fall construction start. I would say that is the best case scenario.
Okay, very good. Okay, anything else, we'd like to talk about this? I think we pretty well covered. Kelsey, do you have anything else you'd like to bring up at this time?
I don't think we have anything else for today.
Okay, hearing nothing else going here, we're gonna adjourn this meeting, and thank